Well, hey, I'm have the pleasure of being with Steve Arnold. He's one of our missionaries. He's a missionary here to in the U.S. and lives here in Southern California. And Steve, it's good to be with you this morning. I
Thank you. It's awesome to be with you, Pastor Dennis.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time to share with us a little bit. Steve, you've had a change since you've been at our church, or since you've shared with us. You've got a change in your focus. Why don't you share with the church a little bit about what that looks like and what you guys are doing?
Okay. Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. Um, so, as you know, first of all, I want to say thank you to the congregation there and to you just for your support. Your church has supported us in missions for quite a while now. And as you know, the last, I think it's about 8 years, we were involved in refugee ministry here in Southern California. And as Pastor Dennis said, we've come through a transition. You know how the Lord sort of steers you in different directions at different times, and it's actually a neat opportunity that God opened up to me in particular. Um, in the past, even in missions overseas, I've been involved in some kind of non-traditional ministry. God gives us all different gifts, and I've been involved in writing, in photography, and things like that overseas for different missions publications and with the Assemblies of God, and but I hadn't done that for a while, and God opened up an opportunity where I can go back and use some of those gifts, still with U.S. missions, intercultural ministries, and that's the branch of U.S. missions that it's all of the outreaches to different language groups, to different ethnic groups, and it's super broad actually. It encompasses some inner city ministries. There are people who work with people, victims of trafficking. There's just all kinds of things, and well over 300 missionary families who are in intercultural ministries now, um, all across the United States, everywhere from Alaska, working with the native population up there, to you know anywhere you can think of.
Wow.
And so, God is doing some amazing things in many different cultural groups here in the United States. And one thing that I've seen all along from the time I was a kid in church is the value of telling the stories of what God is doing. And I think it's such a powerful thing in more than one way. It's powerful for us to remember and to tell the stories ourselves of what we've seen God doing and the impactful things that He is accomplishing. And then it's also awesome for other people because you hear about missionaries who are called to the mission field, and so many times that spark happened when they were listening to someone share about what God has done on this mission field or that mission field. And so, to make a long story short, our leadership in Springfield at the headquarters uh, opened up an opportunity for me to come on board with intercultural ministries and do exactly that, to travel from location to location, to meet the different ministries, the missionaries, and see what God is doing in all these different groups, in all these different settings, and interview people, take photographs, write articles, take some video, and just provide the content that's necessary to get out the word of what God is doing. Because there are amazing stories to be told, but it's not being adequately put out there for churches and for people to understand, not just what God is doing, but the opportunities that we have right here in America, because God has brought people from so many different lands, so many different cultures. And we saw that with the refugee ministry, and, there are ministries to people with disabilities, just all kinds of special things that are being done, just kind of specialized ministries. And so it's
Wow.
exciting. And as a part of that, uh, they set a new budget for us. And so that's what I'm in the process of right now, is trying to raise that support base, because there's a lot of travel that's involved and so forth. There are aspects that are going to add to the monthly amount that we need. So I'm working on that, and um, in the in the time of the pandemic, it's been an interesting thing.
Yeah, I'm sure it has.
Yeah.
I'm sure it has. Well, it's always great to be able to do something that is you're passionate about, and to use your gifts
Yeah.
specifically, and more hone them in for the kingdom.
Yeah.
So tell me, how has the pandemic affected you, and
Yeah.
what are your greatest challenges there?
It's been interesting. We've having been in world missions and US missions, we've done some fundraising and some support raising up that prayer support and financial support. And it's never an easy thing, but it's a process that God uses. That it's a time of ministry. It's not just a time of of begging or taking or trying to get people to give. It's a time of ministry, and you get to be in contact with all kinds of people. But it's been interesting because just seemed like just about February, I was really starting to get some traction. Um, Getting some services at churches scheduled and so forth, and then this whole thing hit and everything shut down. And so I had a number of services canceled. And the local churches, as you well know, have been facing a lot of unique situations. And so it's a time to try to be sensitive as well. As a missionary, God is working through the local church, and He's also working through missionaries, through evangelists, through all different means, and we're all one body. And so it's a time to be sensitive and not be too aggressive. But it seems like things are to the place where I've been contacting again and starting to get some responses. It's been a little disappointing, obviously, because it seems to have pushed things back. But if God is called for this kind of ministry, I really believe He'll provide as He always has. And so I'm just going to plug away and keep contacting churches and people and watch what God's going to do.
Oh, good for you. I know that's yeah, I've always said to almost every missionary that I know, I've said, you guys are heroes to me on this side, because raising support is such a challenge right there, and for this to be placed on top of it, it's I know that it can be nerve-wracking, and yet I appreciate the take that you have on it, that it's also a time of ministry and on getting to meet the churches and stuff. So
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
your
God can
family
use
has always had a special place here at Bethany Church. Your dad was, some of
it. Yeah.
might remember, your dad did such a great job of holding the church together during a period of time right before I came as the interim pastor. And so did such a beautiful job of ministry here.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was a special time, and I know that they made some good connections there with the
yeah,
folks
yeah,
in
yeah,
Alhambra.
yeah. Well, Stevie, you have something to share, a word of encouragement, maybe a word of from.
Absolutely, yeah, I'd love to. And I just wanted to read a couple of verses from First Chronicles chapter 16, and it relates specifically to the ministry that I'm going into now. But I believe it relates to all of us as believers. And it's set in a section that's called David's Psalm of Thanksgiving, and it's the time when the ark of the covenant had just been brought into Jerusalem. And it's really a beautiful passage, but I just wanted to read a couple of verses. And verse 23 and 24, it says, "Let the whole earth sing to the Lord, proclaim His salvation from day to day, declare His glory among the nations, His wondrous works among all peoples." And especially that second verse really impacts me. It says, "Declare His glory among the nations." And I see this in two directions almost. And it says, "His wondrous works among all the peoples." For me, I see it in two directions, that we're to declare the wondrous works that God is doing among the nations, the awesome things. He's saving people, He's healing people, He's transforming families and lives, and giving people a new foundation, a new hope in Him. So we're called to do that, and it's something that resonates and changes something in our own hearts, as I mentioned earlier. As we rejoice in what God is doing, as we declare, as we tell the stories, God does something in us. He wants us to declare to the nations and about what he's doing in the nations. So, there are a lot of people who have no idea about the God of creation. They don't know Jesus, from many nations, from many language groups, from many cultures, and we're to declare his wonders to them. But then as we see him working in those groups, we're to declare to each other the things that God is doing. And so there's that two-sided aspect. And I think it blesses God's heart as we verbalize and as we repeat and as we remember, as we talk about the things that he's accomplishing in our lives and in the nations. And it's just an exciting thing. And I know it's an encouragement for me, and I need to do a lot better at it, just to remember the things that God has done and remember that he hasn't changed. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. He's trustworthy. And the thing that's most awesome is that he cares about us. The God of creation cares about us. He sent his son, Jesus, to die for our sins. And we have the chance to tell the nations about that, and then to tell each other about how God is touching lives all around the world. So I hope that's an encouragement to you.
You know what, that is right in there with something that I've been sharing with the church. It seems like the last couple of months, especially, just trying to remind us just how never lose sight that we're to celebrate our salvation. Our
Absolutely.
salvation is the greatest thing.
Yes.
It really is. And as believers, we could just become we can become, it's just, it become old stuff to us, but
Right,
it
yeah.
was never meant to be old stuff. So
No,
that's
yeah,
that right in there with what I've been sharing. So
absolutely. Yeah.
well, Steve, God
Yeah.
bless you, man. I appreciate you sharing with us today, and man,
Thank you for
we
having me.
pray that
Yeah.
God, one of the things that we've been committed to in this last, especially during the pandemic, one of our prayer calls that we do on a weekly basis is we focus on all of our missionaries, and so you guys
Oh, awesome.
are weekly in our prayers, and
Oh, thank you.
we will add to that prayer that your support will come in, and that
Yeah.
services with new relationships and connections will be made, and
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
we pray God's blessing. So thanks you.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for taking the time. I'm going to throw this in there real quick. That just a couple of miles away from Steve is a blazing fire this morning, and we were grateful to be able to squeeze this in today, and so
Yeah.
we've been praying over that this morning as well. So
I've got a pile of stuff right by the door here, ready to go if we have to evacuate. Yeah.
man,
So
well, God
we need
bless
to
you,
keep
man.
praying for each other. So
All
yeah.
right. God bless. We'll talk
God
to you.
bless you. Thanks so much. Bye bye.